I'm getting into the horse riding stance on this video. I'm gonna have to take my face out of the video so that I can really focus on my feet. It's just what it is, so let's get to it. And the reason why this is such an important thing to know is because we're gonna be using this throughout every single thing that I teach on this channel that has to do with Qigong or Kung Fu. That being said, let's get into it. But first, alright, so first things first, shoulders are going to fit in between the heels. So this is a bit different than shoulder width, and I've got my handy dandy staff here to show you. It's even got some partitions. Now, this shirt makes my shoulders look a little bigger than they really are, but you just grab a stick or a broomstick or something that's straight. Hold it up to your own shoulders if you don't have a partner. Measure by matching the edge of your pinky here or the edge of your thumb, whichever one works best for you, to the width of your shoulders. So I think we can all agree that this is the width of my shoulders just about. Maybe minus this here, right? That's about how wide my shoulders are. All right, we got that done, handled. That's as narrow as my stance should possibly be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line my foot up here with the edge of my hand, line my foot up here with the edge of my hand, and that's as narrow as my stance should be, the width of my shoulders. So the next step is to turn the toes in 30 degrees. Maybe not everybody knows what 30 degrees is right off the top of their head, but we all know what 45 degrees is. Half of a 90-degree angle is 45, so we're going to go less than 45 degrees, pigeon-toed inwards. So now that I've got my shoulders width measured up, the second part of the stance, which is turning the toes in. How I like to find 30 degrees is we just go less than 45. So if we're looking at the ground, and that's a 90, that's a 45, that's a 45, and we're going to want to go half of this 45-degree angle turned in. So if that's 45, that's about half of a 45. So I want to make sure my toes are turned in. Half of that 45. What's half of this 45? All right, so I got my toes turned in, half of a 45-degree angle. Now we're going to go into the third part of the horse riding stance, which is tucking the tailbone, which later on we will combine this with the fifth part of the stance. But first, you need to do the fourth part of the stance, and we'll do it together here in a moment. Once we've got the shoulders width set in between the feet, and we've got the toes turned in, we're going to tuck the tailbone. So tucking the tailbone may not be something you're familiar with. But in order to tuck the tailbone, what we do is we tilt the pelvis here, almost like we're doing a pelvic thrust and holding it, just without the thrusting part. Okay? Right? We don't want to imbalance ourselves. So we may need to do the pelvic tilt and then actually seat ourselves backwards over the heels to make sure that the spine is actually straight. So now that we've got the shoulders fitting in between the feet, we've got the toes turned in 30 degrees, half of 45 roughly, we've got the tailbone tucked, we can work on combining the tailbone tuck with the fifth part, but first, we want to make sure that we're doing the fourth part, which is gripping the toes, okay? So we want to actually tighten up the toes, grip the toes before we do the fifth part, which is twisting the knees out. And 3, 5, and 4 all combine into one swift motion later on, but they are their own individual aspects that you will need to practice, and in that order is the best way to do them. So, we've got all 5 parts of the lower half of the stance work here. That's shoulders fit in between, toes are turned in, tailbone is tucked, twisting the knees out, but first, before you twist the knees out, you want to grip the toes. And this is to prevent injury when twisting out the knees, screwing the feet into the ground as we twist the knees out, sinking into the stance as we tuck the tailbone, tucking the chin at the same time and stretching the crown up. So now that you've got the horse riding stance down, shoulders fit in between, toes turned in, tailbone tucked, chin tucked, sinking into the stance, gripping the toes, twisting the knees out, and stretching the crown up, we're going to go into move number 0 of the Tong Ling QiGong, or in other words, noted as preparation.